Okay, we're live here. Are we having any audio issues? Just want to make sure we're not having the issues we had the other night. Okay, sounds like we're good to go. All right, so good morning, everybody. Today we've got a special stream. I'm going to be analyzing a game that was sent to me on Twitter by one of our fans. His name is Kyle Creamer, and he's a fellow New Brunswicker. I have not met him in person. Hopefully one of these days our paths will cross. But he was nice enough to send me a game, and we're going to take a look. So he was up against Adam Dorrance of Nova Scotia. People in the Maritimes know Adam. Very strong player. I believe he's at least 2,300. He might even be pushing 2,400 by now. Very talented player. I've never played him myself, primarily because I don't play much over the board anymore. But in this game, Kyle played very well, especially against such a strong opponent. And this was at the Pawnwise festival that was held in Nova Scotia in 2022. So let's take a look. We'll leave the eval bar on, but I'm not going to be analyzing with an engine other than just seeing the eval bar. So Kyle was white and Adam played black. So let's see. And it's a London system. Very solid choice. Now I've looked into the London. And for me to get familiar with the London system, I watched a lot of Simon Williams videos, Ginger GM, very popular YouTuber and streamer himself. And I believe he has a course on the London. He does have one on the Jobava London, which goes like this when you have knight c3 with your bishop f4. That's not the course I'm referring to. He's got one on just the straight London, which is more characterized with playing your pawn to c3 or c4, and then later bringing your knight in. The other player who is known to play the London a lot is Godakomsky, and he's a streamer now as well. A strong U.S. player. Was one of the top U.S. players for a long time back in the day. So if you check out his current streams, he plays the London a lot as well. Okay, so enough with those introductions to those fine players. I just wanted to make a point that whenever I would play the London, I try to delay the development of the knight to f3, and there are some advantages to doing that. So I would play e3, e3 here. And the main reason is that you want to have your queen looking at the h5 square. And the idea for that is you want to discourage black from playing knight h5 and taking this bishop. So let's see, a typical way that this might go. Let's say c5, knight c6. We bring this, probably should bring our bishop in first. e6, knight here, and black has an option, bishop e7 or bishop to d6. Let's just say, for the sake of discussion, bishop e7 was played. And now I would look at playing the knight here. Now it's true that black could still do this, but I would take back with the H pawn, and I have an open H file. This can sometimes be strong with the pawn moving forward. It has been a while since I've looked at this, so I'm not sure. It might be possible for white to play H3 and tuck the bishop back as well. Of course, black at this point can play bishop to D6, and a lot of players will just take. Bishop G5, don't think is much of a worry for black, because black is ready to strike with E5 here. So a common alternative is bishop to D6. Anyway, that is one thing I do remember from Ginger GM's course, is the delay, the development of this knight. Okay, anyway, that's not to say knight F3 is a bad move. This is what Kyle played. This is fine. And we've essentially arrived at a very similar position that we just saw. So this is your pyramid pawn structure that you get in the London system. And now Adam played aggressive queen b6 move. And Kyle replied with queen c1. So this move I don't like for a couple of reasons. Well, the queen is on a very passive square there, and as we'll see in the game, black will get a rook on c8, and so he'll always have a line of sight on the queen with his rook. So I think the better move here is queen b3. And queen b3, I mean, this is the diagonal that queen wants to be on, and you're never afraid of this exchange because now we've got an open A file for our rook. So this can be beneficial for white. These double pawns don't mean anything. They're not isolated. It'd be an issue if they're isolated, but this is a good pawn structure. And perhaps Kyle was worried about the c4 move. Now, I don't... Okay, is it this line? There is a specific line that black can play. I think this is the line where he can play bishop to f5. Yeah. So this is a little tricky. So this is better for black because he's going to pick up the rook. So white gained the bishop, but he's going to lose the rook. So in this instance, you can take, and I think this is fine for white. The only thing that you got to be concerned about is that black's rook is now active, but the difference between this structure and the previous structure, these pawns, they're backwards, meaning that this guy is ahead of them, so they can't be protected by other pawns. But you got to be a little careful due to this open A file. So if we go knight here, I don't think quite in time for A3. If we play A3, black can just play B4. And he's gotten away with his doubled pawns. We can't take this way because we'd lose the rook. And if we take this way, well, black can just take with the knight. Same reason we can't take the knight. Now, I'm just wondering here in this position, B3. Can we play B3? Probably B4 is strong here. Yeah, engine tends to agree, minus 1.7. this can get uncomfortable. Okay, just a second here. So how do we delay? Okay, maybe we can go knight a3 here. Do we have the opportunity to do that? That could be it. That might be the way around it. Because now b5 is not possible. So black could try a6, threatening to take the knight off. Then we go knight b5. And these pawns aren't moving. So that looks pretty strong there. I'm also curious if there's another move here for white. I don't think so. I think once you play queen b3, you're committed to taking here. So that's what I would have chosen. But let's get back to the game. So Kyle chose queen c1, defending the pawn on b2. Adam brought the bishop out, develop our knight, and then there we go. We've got a rook lined up with the queen. Bishop to e2. h6. I don't know if h6 was totally necessary there. I think simply e6 and getting this guy out makes sense, but it's certainly useful. You can bring the bishop back, and if you castle, you've got this escape square. So white castled. Now e6. And Kyle jumps in with the knight, puts the knight on a nice square. Unfortunately, this is a slight inaccuracy because Adam in the game developed his bishop, but I think he could have gotten maybe not an edge here. Let me see. I think he could have taken here. And the point is, if white were to take back with the e pawn, well, like I said earlier, we're lined up with the queen, so we would have this tactic. We can't take the knight. So we would have to take back with the c pawn, and there's no immediate discovery because I mean, if the rook is unprotected, so the only knight move that makes sense would be knight e7 just to protect the rook, and we're not going to do that because we're blocking the bishop. But the point is, we've now opened up the c file for that rook, and then black can simply castle and look at some play along the c file. Now also note, if white tried to take the knight here first, it might be possible to take on c3. Let me see. I think it is. Oh, my apologies. No, it's not, because the knight comes back. No. And we can't take here. Interesting. Engine still likes that. Yeah, that gives up the rook. What am I missing here? Oh, maybe c2 is strong. Just 1 second here. What makes this so good for black? I mean, again, that loses the rook. So why is this so great? Oh, queen takes b2. Yes. Right. Queen takes b2. Take. Rook d1. because the bishop has this square. And I suppose it's going to be hard to get rid of that pawn. Maybe like bishop a3. That pawn could be there for a long time. So despite black being down a piece. Okay, so maybe knight e5 wasn't the best. Maybe knight d4 makes more sense, hitting the bishop. Yeah, that makes more sense, because after this, we're ready to take the knight. Sorry, take the bishop, pardon me. Still likes, okay, still likes black here, though. Okay. We could take here first. Yeah, because you can't take the knight again. And now this is actually quite favorable for white, not having that bishop there. There we go. So yeah, anyway, the point of that is you just got to be careful whenever you have your queen here. You're always susceptible to some potential tactics. So instead of knight e5, how do we deal with the fact, I would even say consider taking on c5 here. And yes, it does give away the d pawn, which is a central pawn. The idea is that we're going to develop this knight with tempo, pardon me. So we're hitting the bishop, and black is likely going to want to keep that bishop. And then we have access to the d4 square. Maybe even this one. And we should be able to trade at least one set of minor pieces here. Good morning, Strobex. Still likes black slightly. I shouldn't say slightly. 0.9 is fairly advantageous. I think this would have been a better try than knight e5. H3 also makes some sense. Want to bring your bishop back, give your king an escape square. Yeah, I think you need this knight here to reinforce d4. Okay, well, let's get on with it. So Kyle played knight e5 and reinforced his knight. Good move. Castles. And bishop to d3. That makes sense, because, I mean, this bishop is a beast. It's really taking away that b1 square. So I understand bishop to d3. So no, this isn't one of my students. This is Kyle, who he follows me on Twitter, and he sent me his game. So this was played last year, and he's playing a 2300 player. I'm not sure what Kyle's strength is. I forgot to look that up. But I do know his opponent. His opponent is well known in this area, and he might even actually be up to 2400 now. So his opponent is very strong. Okay, so trading off that bishop makes sense. Gives white some breathing room here. Can now utilize these squares. So knight e4. The knight has accomplished its job. Go back to e5. Yeah, again, I'm curious if it makes sense here to take on c5 because black has to make a decision. I suspect black will want to save the bishop. Well, I'm not so sure in the London. He might take this way, but I think the more natural way is to take here. And maybe knight e5 here. Or you could even go queen d2. Yeah, queen d2 here makes sense. Although actually knight e5 first, we're threatening knight d7. So I think just by trading those pieces off makes it a little easier for white to maneuver, especially with this queen. It'd be nice to get off of this this c file here. And the engine is showing minus 0.3, but I think for all intents and purposes we can say that that's an equal-ish game. But knight e5 makes sense too. Occupy the e5 post. Okay, so Adam brought the queen back. Okay, because there was a threat. Knight d7, and that would have been a fork. So h3, that's a useful move. Escape square for the king, and also we can put our bishop there. Okay, that's interesting. Knight g5. So the knight was quite well placed on e4. And black wants to trade. Queen d1. Okay, I like that move. That's multi-purpose. Gets out of here, the line of fire, and if black is going to take, and in fact this is what happens, that has actually helped white. So this is an example, I talk about this a lot on stream, that you have to have patience in chess, and a lot of grandmasters, if you watch them play, they'll make moves like queen d1, and they'll let their opponent invoke the exchange of pieces, right? Because white could have taken on g5 himself when the knight was on f3, but by allowing black to do it, white's improved his position and he's exchanged the pieces at the same time. So it's almost as if black is giving white a hand. Now, that doesn't mean that black is making a fatal blunder. It's just one of those, I don't know if it's psychological, but one of those things that I see in a lot of grandmaster games that they talk about keeping the tension. So keeping the tension here would be if black were to not exchange. Maybe, let's say, bishop to d6, for example. And just sit on the position and see who's going to make a move first in terms of the exchanges. Kind of like a gunfight, a showdown. Who's going to pull their gun out first? Okay. So yeah, I really like that queen d1 move. Makes sense. And so at this point, against a 2300 player, I'd be quite happy with white. It's equalish, but this is a nice bishop, and white's got a strong center. Perfect kind of position that you would take in the London system. Okay, so f6, bishop back. I don't know if I'd go all the way there. Probably bishop g3 was fine. The downside of bishop to h2 is it takes away escape square from your king. So I would have put the bishop on g3 there. Okay, so black is trying to muster up some queenside play. And now white is picking at some of the light square weaknesses in black's camp. Protects the pawn, and now we got to get the rooks involved. Okay, so I suspect black was concerned about white playing e4 there, so f5 makes sense. Queen back to e3. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, the play is happening on the queen side. Bring both rooks over, because it looks like sooner or later there's going to be a file or two that's going to open. I don't know if white... Yeah, based on the fact that black has the pawn storm already rolling here, I don't think white would have... Yeah. I was thinking whether or not white could get e4 in here, but it loosens d4 and also creates some weaknesses here, and maybe it opens up the king. So I don't think white could seriously think about that. I mean, it'd be a risk. Be a risk. I like the way that white played here. Rook c1 makes sense to me. Keep it solid. Okay, so black has decided to open things up. Okay. b3. Okay, so the downside of b3 is it does create weaknesses on those two squares. But the thing is, was there any way to avoid that? Because the threat right now for black is to simply exchange the rooks, followed by queen takes a2. I don't think white wants to take here, and this is an example of not keeping the tension because white has relinquished the c-file. Now black has full control of the c-file, and rook c2 in particular looks strong. So that's not looking like an option, and I don't think if we were to play rook d1 with the idea of, well, I mean, even a3 is no good because the bishop is helping protect it. So yeah, I think that makes sense, the b3 move. I don't see another move that's really possible for the queen, for the white pieces. Okay, queen to a3. So now there's a threat of taking and winning a rook. So white has to protect. Excellent. Don't exchange here. You don't want to give up the c-file. You want to maintain a fight on the c-file. Okay. Okay. Now this is okay. This exchange is good because you can immediately challenge the c-file again. In the previous position that we looked at, the queen was on a3, so this wouldn't have been possible because there'd be two guys on the c1 square. So this is fine. Now the only downside is that white has relinquished the c-file now to the queen. So that was a nice little finesse by Adam, the player with the black pieces. Because let's say white just plays, I don't know, king h2. Then black is going to double up and basically force white to yield the c-file. So instead of doing that, maybe white can just sit here. Can white get away with just sitting? King h2. No, I think black's gonna get that anyway. I guess that's the point here. Same idea as in what happened with the game. So I don't see how white is going to be able to prevent that. Okay. All right, so that's unfortunate that we can't keep control of the c-file. However, still should be drawish. Engine is showing 0.2. So really the only thing that black has going for him is the c-file dominance. If we look at the bishops, white's bishop is actually quite better than black's. And purely because this bishop is stunted by its own pawn. And this bishop, while it does have 3 pawns on its color, the e5 square is a really nice square. And perhaps white could generate some counterplay at some point on g7. Who knows? Okay, so it's now an endgame, so we bring our king into battle. Good move. Good move. Okay, so now, let's see. Taking. The only thing I don't like about taking is that it does free up this pawn for being able to move. And when this pawn moves, this bishop now gets access to b4 and a3. And that's kind of what happens in the game here later. So what if white simply played king to d1 here? If black takes, well, that's not really much of a gain for black, because this pawn is still stuck on a dark square. And if black plays a3, yes, that does look a little scary because we've got an a3 pawn that's protected, but again, in the endgame, you generally don't want your pawns on the color of your bishop, and so it's taking away some valuable squares from the bishop. So in fact, in this position, I think after queen c2, white is fine. Black either has to relinquish the c-file or trade the queens. And in fact, if this queen trade were to happen, it might be possible for white to pick off these pawns. Yeah, that's not going to be easy to achieve now that I think about that. You'd need the d4 square to be able to kind of march over here. So this should be draw. But this is all locked up, and black is not going to make further progress. So I think Kyle got probably nervous here and thought trading pawns to simplify things would be beneficial. Now the engine says it's a fine move, but I guess just philosophically, based on what I was saying, it doesn't make sense to give black the opportunity to move this guy forward. Not when you don't have to. So on that principle, I would have played king to d1, because I think taking here ever so slightly improves black's position. Engine is showing that it's not enough for a win, but you know, in many chess games, and we'll see what happens here, some minor improvements, move after move after move, eventually lead to a big advantage. I mean, how do you think Karpov won all of his games? Okay, so queen to b2. All right, queen to c6, king to d2. Okay. All right, so now black has improved the position of the queen. and might improve the position of the bishop if we can move this guy. So the thing that I would note with queen c4 is that black is eyeing the f1 square and is going to pester those pawns. So was it possible, let's just have a look here. So in this position, was it possible I guess it wasn't possible for white to challenge the c-file because the king, yeah, the king has to be on one of these two squares in order to play queen c2. Yeah, so it looks like black has made a little bit of progress here. This is kind of irritating having to deal with this. That being said, I'm curious. Yeah, I don't think we can sack this guy. I was just slightly considering playing like bishop to g3 and sacking g2 so that we can get the c-file, but it might be risky. Let me look at that a little further, actually. I'm intrigued now. So bishop to g3 might actually just be similar to the game, and black can play b3 here. The point of b3 is that now we have our bishop very strong position. But maybe even this, I don't know. Yeah, it does look like black has quite a bit of play here. It's unfortunate because the queen, if the queen was on the c-file now, then we could infiltrate with check and start picking off black's pawns. But so here the material is equal. White does have a passed pawn on the outer edge of the board, but I think white's king is too weak here, and that's why the engine is favoring black. And I would take black in this position as well. So I guess the bottom line is it doesn't look like we're going to be able to stop this idea. Is there any benefit to playing queen b3? So queen f1, bishop g3, queen takes. Yeah, and again, this is the thing. I want my queen on c2. I want to be able to play check. And the thing is, if we go queen c2 now, can black get away with trading here? Because on e4 it protects e6. So, but even then, maybe we can be a hassle. Because this bishop might be after queen b7. Bishop here. Looks a little uncomfortable. But engine is saying almost -3 here. So does it simply want to take on h3? I didn't think so, yeah. Because that does allow queen c8 check followed by queen takes e6. So what is it, the move that the engine wants to play here? F4 might be a possibility. That very well could be it. So the idea is that if they take with the bishop, well then the bishop is no longer protecting F2. And this does look good for black. This black's going to be able to pick up the H3 pawn and is holding on to E6. And so after F4, we would now have bad pawn structure. Yes, at the cost of a pawn, but I think it's worthwhile. H5 could be strong here. Okay, I'm thinking H5 with the idea of H4, and this bishop is running low of squares. So if white has to play H4 himself, now white is the one with lots of pawns on the color of its bishop. So black can even look at exchanging the queens here, and he would have very good winning chances in that endgame. Because black's... really, it's only this guy that black would have to worry about. And the bishop is really boxed in here. It's going to take a while to get the bishop out. But I did see a problem after H5. It might simply just be Queen G6. Although the engine is saying no. It says, what you talking about? What you talking about, Aaron? So what are we missing here? Bishop F6, I think, is just a perpetual. And there's no escaping this perpetual. Constant checks. So can we decide to give up? I mean, we'll have to decide to give up a pawn here. The question is which one? Don't think Queen E4. Don't know about this. See, now this is not an endgame that black wants to go in because white's going to pick off this pawn, and these two pawns are able to rock and roll. Oh, it's just H3 is hanging. Okay, I just completely brain farted on that. Okay, H3 is hanging. Right, so queen is protecting both. Now, after check, we are attacking the bishop and the king, so we got to play bishop F8. Yeah, this is, and then queen F5 is coming. Yeah, this is winning for black. So how do we go down this rabbit hole? Trying to find a solution here for white in this position. Engine says minus 0.6. So we looked at queen b3. Queen b3 doesn't quite cut it. What was wrong? Did I not consider just queen c2? What was the issue with queen c2? Oh, I think it was the b3 idea. No. No, it wasn't the b3 idea. In this position. I think the king was on e1. So why does that matter? Takes. Check. Gotta go here. If we go to d1, oops, checkmate. King doesn't have the c2 square. So we'd have to go to c1 and then check. And this is kind of similar. Well, this might give white good practical chances. We've got check. Now if the king wants to hold on to e6, let's see, can king h7 be played? Here, check. Yeah, I'm concerned about white's king. White's king, oh goodness. We can't stop mate. So that's a big problem. Now, can we take with the queen, though, instead? That is not good either. Why? Check here. Oh, okay, because we're going to get f2. f2 at the very... Yeah. This is no good. And then again, whoops. Forgot the bishop is en prise. So where to put the bishop? 5 pawns against 5 pawns. Perhaps we can go queen here with the idea of bishop a3 and here. Yeah, it looks like black's got some good pressure here. Because the queen, like, it really can't do anything. If we try to go to a4 and do some checks, the king's just going to hide. So the minute that we play queen a4, we're going to play this. Threatening mate. And you really can't infiltrate because you're just going to have to come back to defend mate. So I think this is very instructive on, you know, the issue with taking on a4 earlier. Flying Squid, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Because it just, like I said, gives black these ideas. And white wasn't obligated to free up that pawn. So a very minor inaccuracy, but that had great implications in the game. So what else could we try? We've tried queen moves. I can't imagine queen c1 is good because it drops a2. So what other move could we try here for white? Hello, Flying Squid, welcome. Use those emotes. Okay, is there anything going wrong with f4 here? Because after queen f1, yeah, we're just picking off g2. You can't protect g2. So I can't think of a good move here for white. This is tough. Looks like black has made some real progress with queen c4. Okay, so let's see how the game ended. So the king came back. Nice pawn sacrifice to open up the b4 for the bishop. Boom, just like that. And you've got the queen and the bishop. That's a very unhealthy king. Check. Okay, we take with check. Check. And yeah, we've essentially achieved the position that I just went through just a moment ago. So material is equal. Both sides have 5 pawns. Both sides have a queen and a bishop. But if we look at king safety, it's pretty clear to see that white's king has some serious issues, whereas black's king's relatively safe, especially because black could play king h7 and he has some pawn cover. So let's see how black was able to finish this off. Good move. So that ties the queen down to the defense of b2, because if the queen were to, say, go queen a4 with the idea to infiltrate, well, you can't do that because of checkmate. Now I wonder, bishop f4 can... Oh, this is also... Okay, this is very nice as well. If white were to try queen c2, I suppose we could simply just take here. And then we're up a pawn, and black still has issues with the king. So what did Kyle try here? Move the bishop. Okay, protect the pawn. Oh, apparently that was a mistake by black. Wow. So the engine eval went to 0.3. I was curious. Yeah, I don't think... Okay, g4 looks way too risky. Pardon me, g5. Because it opens up the king. But funny enough, engine doesn't seem to mind. Ah, are we... Okay, we might be escaping on... Okay, that's exactly what's going to happen. No more checks. Because again, the queen is tied to the defense of this. And so now the bishop would have to move. And black could even just grab that pawn because, yeah, that looks like a scary check. But this is fine. And again, you've got to always be concerned about checkmate. So I think the black king is just fine there. But even g5 optically looks a little risky. So what about queen d3? Does queen d3 help at all? Well, if white were to go queen c2, play check. The queen has to block. Now, we'd like to take here, but the bishop is hanging. So what if we threw in a check? The king would have to come up. Maybe we can go bishop b4 here. Still a bit of work to do here for black. But I suspect, I mean, black has these two diagonals. That's going to be tough for white. Okay. So back to the game. So Kyle played bishop to f4. Now this was apparently a mistake, because now it's 0.3. So why is that a mistake for white? Black. You like how I verbalize what I'm thinking in each move. Helps conceptualize and learn. Excellent. Well, that's what I like to do. I like to play slow chess on stream too, so I do that when I'm playing my slow games. So do check out one of my slow chess streams, or you can even check out my YouTube channel. I've got some of my games on there already. You can use !YouTube. That'll show you the YouTube link. So the big question, what's wrong with king h7? mean, I see a possible tactic here, but I don't know if it's any good. I was thinking about this. But yeah, black is just going to gain... Well, black is either going to win g2 or d4 here. If the king moves, we take on g2. If the queen blocks the check, we take on d4. And black is up 2 pawns. That's a pretty easy win for black. So what was the move that white could have tried here? Maybe g4? Trying to open up the diagonal? But I guess black isn't obligated to take. Black could just let white take. So there must be a move here that white could try. We just gotta find it. Because the evaluation went up to 0.3, so in white's favor. Oh, maybe it's simply just pushing the A pawn. And the engine laughs at me. Ha ha ha. It says, no, sucker. The evaluation is now minus 3.2 if you see the bar on the left. I believe I have the eval bar up there. Yes, I do. So, what the heck can white try? Is there any benefit to queen here this time? Ah, that might be the move. Line up the queen with the king. So we've got check. It looks like yes. Oh, can't do that because we lose the bishop. Yeah, don't do that, Aaron. So this, okay, I'm seeing it now. I see the light. This looks like it forces an exchange of queens, which is a-okay for white. If white can get the queens off, then the king's position being a little unsafe becomes much safer. I mean, queens are such a great attacking piece. So that looks to be the move. So king h7 is an error because of queen c2. And you cannot avoid the exchange of queens. The only move that black could try, other than exchanging queens right away, is queen to e1 check. King has no moves. This square is taken away, so we gotta play queen c1. And now, I mean, the queen is tied to the bishop. So you can't bring the queen up here because you lose the bishop. So you either gotta go queen d2, bishop d2, or takes. And either way, that's going to be a very advantageous endgame for white, actually. Yeah, this might be winning for white. Maybe maybe g5 here. I don't see how... Does black bring the king up? Okay, that must be it. So, yeah, the king can come up and then maybe infiltrate here or support the pawn push. Now the bishop does a nice job of looking at a5, so it's going to keep an eye on this guy. And if white comes over, well, actually, what happens after bishop c7 here? Because now white can simply push. So it looks like black had to be very careful here. Oh, okay, bishop a5. Yeah, stop the pawn, of course, and stop bishop c7. So now black has time to play king h5, even though the engine still doesn't like my move. Let's see why. I'm thinking this looks fine for black. Ah, okay, hold on. Instead of king d3, let's go king b3. And the idea is to play here, followed by here. So, is there a way for black to stop that? King f7. King f7. So on king b3 we can play king d6 and you can't go there. So what if the bishop comes here first? Now is it g5 time? Let's have a look. h5. No. I'm just trying to create a pass pawn here, because this is coming. I don't think this is helping, because white's not obligated. If white takes, then black has the option to create a pass pawn. White's not obligated to take. Okay, just a sec, folks. I have to take my dog out. She's whining at the door. So I will be right back. Be right back, folks. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. But the dog. When you gotta go, you gotta go. All right. So what in this position here? It's equal. Curious if there's like a sack here. Because if the bishop takes, then you're not threatening this bishop b4. And I was thinking if you take on e5, maybe there's a way to create a pass pawn here. I mean, maybe bishop b4 is not such a huge threat, because we would have time to go here in a7. But the engine doesn't like g4, it doesn't like h4. What do you want, engine? Do we have time to play this move? Okay, hold on. So now bishop here takes. Now you don't want to play a5 because bishop takes. So king here. Ah, now we're making progress here. Oh, that might not have been so good because yeah, because now we're blocking. So maybe we just bring the king over. Now the king is over to help stop the pawn. King c6. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Anyway, that would have been more challenging for black for sure. So a slight inaccuracy, king h7. That's not so obvious. I mean, that looks like a very logical move. Put the king in a safe spot. Okay, so let's see how this finished. So Kyle tried g4. Aha, so he wanted to sack a piece there. Is that a perpetual? Ah, yes, because the very nice idea by Kyle. With this pawn there, the king can't come out. And you're not escaping the checks there. Very nice idea. Okay, so takes. Bishop back. So I suspect the king is coming out here. I mean, I'd be a little nervous as black here, though. Check. Check. Okay, I guess that's the point. And again, we're tied to the defense of b2. We have to stop mate. Although in this case we don't, because there's two mates. So yeah, it looks like black's king just finds a safe square. So bishop has to come back. Improve the king. Okay, and now with those two pawns being lost, black's up 2 pawns, and even if black has to sack the bishop for this guy, these pawns are pretty menacing. Yeah. Just got to avoid the checks. And at this point, Kyle resigned. Wow, what a game by Kyle. Thank you very much for sending that. Very instructive. So basically, I think the key position, let's see if we can find it here. Nope, a little further than that. So this was the key position. Black had played a4, and the position is quite equal here. I think this was the slight inaccuracy. This made white's job a lot harder and gave black chances. So that's really the only reason why black was able to win this game, was because he was able to develop the bishop. So I think had white tried king to d1 and then either a3 or b3, a takes b3, doesn't matter, because this pawn is still not going to be mobile and it's going to take away that square from that bishop. And so we could then challenge the c-file, and this is a crystal clear draw. So okay, well, that was sent to me by Kyle on Twitter. I had asked people to send me their games, so you can do so yourself if you'd like to have one of your games analyzed. Either contact me through Twitter, or you could join our Discord channel. We've got a PGN channel where people can submit their games that they played. I have another game to review that was submitted by one of our recent viewers, or our newest viewer, pardon me, from a young fella from Brazil. I won't have a chance to do that today, but Sunday I should be able to. So stay tuned for that stream. I think I'm going to wrap it up here for now. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you found this useful, and I hope you have the rest of your day is going to be a good one. Have a good rest of your day. Bye for now.